Hello and welcome to Unbounded Growth, a podcast that challenges you to grow and become a better version of yourself. My name is Mark Allen, and together with my friend Adam, we share thoughts and ideas from the books that we read and how they enhance our personal growth and development. We also host other readers and leaders. We learn from their experiences through our discussions. Our episodes air every Tuesday at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you for listening in, and let's grow together. Unbounded Growth. Hello, good morning, happy Tuesday, and welcome back to Unbounded Growth. We hope that you're doing great and that you're having a wonderful Tuesday. This is episode number 9, season 2. My name is Mark Allen Muteba. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Adam Shabindu. How are you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well, Mark. How are you doing?
I am doing amazing. I am so excited today, as you can tell. I don't know if you can tell how excited I am. We have our guest that we promised you to bring you a guest before the end of the year. The beautiful thing today is that you can not only listen to us today, but if you want, you can go watch us on our YouTube, and you will be meeting this gentleman pretty soon. And I believe that we'll be having an amazing time. Do you want to do the introduction, or do you want me to do it? But before we go there, the giveaway still going on.
Yes, we still have a giveaway going on that we're going to be publishing, or we're going to give the results on Christmas Day. And it's simple. It's going on all our social media platforms, from LinkedIn to Instagram. And we've had a lot of feedback so far. I believe around 27 people have responded to at least the Instagram one. And we are looking forward to having more people responding. This is it's something you're receiving for free that like a lucky winner can get for free, that can help them grow for 2023. The book Atomic Habits has helped really reshape my life and has had some tremendous impact. Even the journal, the James Scale journal, with habit tracking and so on, they are nice tools. And the earbuds, we need earbuds for a lot of things, even for your own privacy.
Especially if you're trying to get back, trying to get back on shape, going to the gym and just listening to on music or motivational speech or whatever, you name it.
Yeah, so it's important. So if you're listening from anywhere around the world, we also have for people living outside of America, because we do have an audience in about 20 plus countries now. Mm-hmm. So with people living outside of America, we have a $50 gift card that you can use for anything. You can buy books. It can help you grow next year into 2023. So feel free to share the page, the posts, and feel free to comment, because it's by commenting that we can keep track of who is actually entering the giveaway.
That's great. So if you are not yet subscribed to our channel, do it right now. And if you are new to this page, or you are new to this podcast, continue to follow us. We try to review a book every week, and now we've been trying to also bring on some expert of the industry, leaders and readers that are here, and even writers that are here to teach us and tell us a lot about themselves. So our guest today is a financial leader. I know Adam has had to meet him and say a lot more about him, but I'll just give a little intro about him, and then Adam will tell us a little somewhere about him before we bring him on. So he's a financial leader. He's not only a financial leader, but he's also a business leader, an entrepreneur. You know, the type of person that we walk into a place and turn the place around. And today we be learning from his lesson and all that about how do you reach your full potential? How do you go about turning your organization around? If you have a struggling business and you've been struggling for years in 2022 and going into 2023, what are the steps that you can do to turn your business around, David? Adam.
Yes, I got a chance to meet David a little over a month ago. And we were having just a chat over LinkedIn, and I got to see his page, and I got to see the small videos that he posts every Monday to help people get fired up for the week. And they were such an inspiration to me, listening to him all the time, taking the courage, and also just helping us visit the beautiful area where he lives, and we get to see the environment in the area. So it was such a great pleasure having just a conversation with him and we planned to meet for 30 minutes, but we went way over 30 minutes because we there was just more stuff to talk about and conversation. Personally, I like to meet, I meet two type of people. I meet people who wants to be where I am. Mm-hmm. And I also love meeting people who are where I want to be. Mm-hmm. And why do I do that? For the first group, I want to be an inspiration. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to inspire. I want to be able to mentor young people. And I also want to stay accountable because the people who are looking up to me mm-hmm. and who I want to be where I am, they are the type of people who help me stay where I am.
Right.
Because every time I want to give up, I know that my fall mm-hmm. won't be a very personal fall. Mm-hmm. It's going to come with a lot of more people falling with me. Mm-hmm. So I have to be it keeps me accountable. Mm-hmm. But meeting also people who are where I want to be mm-hmm. is, it keeps me inspired mm-hmm. and it keeps me empowered. And again, it tells me that it's actually possible. David is a writer. I'm also a writer. I'm working on 3 books right now. I started with 1, which is not complete, which I'm trying to get done. I've made a lot of progress on that.
And I think we talk a lot more about it as we dive into this.
So, and David is a writer. David is an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. David is an investor. So all of those areas, there are things there are places where I want to be. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And I'm looking forward to share this conversation with all our listeners from around the world. And I hope that David's life and David's experience can not only inspire you, but can also push you to new heights as we enter 2023.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, you already know a little bit about him. His name is David. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you David Freedman. How are you doing, David?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you both, gentlemen, for having me on your show. Really excited to be here. As Adam was saying, we spoke, I guess, maybe about a month ago, and I have to say, I was very impressed with Adam and just all his ambition and all the wonderful things that both of you guys are already doing to make a huge difference in this world. So, although I might have a lot more years of experience than you guys, and can hopefully impart some wisdom upon you guys, I know myself and everyone can also learn from you guys as well. So I'm very excited to be here.
I mean, we are more thrilled and more excited to have you, David. And thank you so much for accepting our invite and being here with us on Monday evening, just recording and having this great time. And I believe that we are going to have a lot of amazing conversation here, a lot of questions that we have, and I know we draw a lot from your wisdom. Now, to our listeners and for the people that are watching on Facebook, on YouTube, I'm sorry. There is a little thing that is appearing on David's screen, and because we are doing a kind of 2-man show where we are both working on the technical side and also watching everything, I'm going to make sure that I get it off the screen. So if you don't see me on the screen, don't panic. I'm just taking care of this. Or if you see your mouse pointer hovering over David's face, don't worry about it. We just want to make sure that you have an amazing experience and you're not sitting down there watching a 1-hour interview and thinking to yourself, why can't they just get rid of that little thing on the screen? So we are going to make sure that we get rid of this first before we return. So we take a little 2-minute break. We take care of that, and then we be returning again here with David. We see you shortly.
Yeah, I think he needs to change that. Okay, great.
All right, as promised, we are back, and David's screen looks a lot cleaner now than he did before. I think it was one thing, the beauty of Zoom. You never know what to expect from it. All right, David, let's get into it. Give us in a 10,000 feet of yourself and your life and where you are and how you even got here in the first place.
Yeah, so great question. So I have a pretty diverse background. I think I would say so. I have my undergraduate work was I majored in accounting. I went to graduate school, got an MBA with a concentration in marketing, and most of my working career has been in finance, financial analysis, business planning. But at the same time, I've also been an entrepreneur and turned around a failing business and made it widely successful, and eventually sold it. I'm also a writer and like to do a lot of motivational speaking as well to inspire folks to ultimately live their best life. And I've learned a lot over the years, sometimes the hard way, and I like just kind of sharing the knowledge and wisdom that I've gained over the years to help other people get from where they are to where they want to be. And one of the things I like to say, because I think most of the people watching your show have these great aspirations in life, and both you gentlemen do too. And certainly not that money is the most important thing in life, but a lot of times when people think of success, right, they think of money. So I just wanted to say this to kind of inspire your listeners. It's not hard to become a millionaire. It's really not that hard. What's hard is getting yourself to believe that you can do it. Once you get yourself to believe that you can do it,
right,
it's not hard. And I've written a lot of what I call these laws of success. And one of my I've written a lot of them. One of my kind of favorites that I wrote is I call it the law of self-belief. And the way that one goes is there are no known benefits to self-doubt, but the possibilities are limitless when you believe in yourself.
And I know we actually have a few questions that we dive into the laws, and I know you've been talking a lot about these laws. You've been writing about them. The first question, though, I have as you talk about your life, what prompted you to go into finance? What was that motivation? Why in your years maybe computer science could have been more creative. Maybe you could have been an engineer. And to the struggling kid today who do not know what they want to do with their lives, and they don't know what major they want to pick, they don't know what they want to be tomorrow.
Right.
What was that process like for you to discover that I want to go into finance?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and even when I chose that field, I wasn't really sure, quite frankly, exactly what I wanted to do, and I grew up, my dad had his own business. He was into real estate, and my mom kind of did all the bookkeeping and things like that. And so I was exposed to, a father that had his own business, my mom kind of handling the books and everything. And I just kind of had this, at a very young age, like sort of fascination with numbers. I was very good in math in school and what have you. And it just kind of seemed like a natural fit, kind of accounting, finance, numbers when I was in college. And, when I graduated, I did my undergraduate work at Penn State University. And when I graduated, I still was like, I really wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. Right. And I got a really great job opportunity. First job out of college was with the Campbell Soup Company. And the reason I chose it was I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And they had this management trainee program where I had the opportunity to rotate through a different department.
That's good.
Every 6 months for 2 years, and then ultimately kind of settle down into a more permanent type of role. And and that really appealed to me because, I'll say this is, there's nothing wrong with not knowing exactly what you want to do.
Right.
And I'll tell you this, I think in general, in college, what you do in class versus what you do out in the real world on the job are typically two very different things.
Right.
So you could love your classwork and then get a job in the real world and not like it, and vice versa. So you have to be careful. Anyway, make kind of a long story short, I rotated through a number of different departments, and ultimately my last rotation was in a small business unit. And we were working on new products and doing financial projections for them. And I really took a liking to that, and settled into, after that 2-year training program, into a role in what was their frozen foods business unit, and working with the marketing team and doing all these financial projections and analyzing, new equipment and things like that. And I really liked that sort of thing. And kind of have stayed in that field of business planning and financial analysis as one of several things I do.
Right.
And I find it very interesting. And everyone's different though. Some people they hate numbers and things like that. I just kind of my thing, But I'll say this, and this really kind of shaped my career quite a bit, was that ultimately led to my entrepreneurial venture.
Right.
Was while I was at Campbell Soup. I still remember this. One of the first departments I rotated through was filled with a number of folks that had been with the company for many, many years, kind of like all the old timers,
right.
30, 35 years or longer, and what happened was, when I was there, was, they got into a little bit of financial problems. And then, these folks that were, just several years away from kind of being set for retirement, after giving the company, 35 years or more of experience, they let them go. And I was like, my goodness, and I was very, it's my first job out of college. I'm in my early 20s. And I'm like, what the heck? These guys have
given their life
killed
to
themselves and given their whole life for this company. And, they just need to kind of work maybe 2 or 3 more years, to be in good shape. And you end that. And so that really, really made me think, a lot of do I really want to be at someone else's mercy?
So that was that like the turning point where you're like, I don't think I want to work for someone for the rest of my life.
That really was the trigger that got me into thinking about, getting into some kind of business for myself and having some control over my destiny, rather than being at the mercy of somebody else.
But then you're taking us already into a business talk here, which I'm very thrilled and excited to talk about. So what was that transition like when you figured this out? How long did it take you from the time you think to yourself, I don't think this is what I want my life to be, to the time you venture into a business? And how was that like?
And just to add, David, before you answer that, and I just had just the same thing, because you just talked about the why you had to go into entrepreneurship. But a lot of time we meet a lot of people, especially motivational speakers. They go ahead and tell you the whys of doing things without actually covering the hows. So my question would be more of an approach related question. Like what would be, as just to piggyback what Mark just asked, what do you think was, and you have the experience in this already, what approach did you take during that transition from corporate to business owner?
Yeah, so wonderful question, both of you guys asked. So I'll say this, it took a long time from that moment when I realized I don't want to be at the mercy of someone else,
Right.
to the time that I actually, got into this entrepreneurial venture. First, there was just kind of a period of time of thinking about it, and honestly being, it's scary,
Right.
for at least for most people.
Agree.
So there
Yeah.
was kind of this back and forth in my head of, like, I got to do this, and then like I'm scared, and I went back and forth like that, for literally, I'm going to say like several years of like, I got to do this. And I ultimately, I'll say kind of, for lack of better words, brainwashed myself into believing that it was more scary to be at, the mercy of someone else than it was to, take a leap and go into, some kind of business for myself. So it's really like a couple of years just kind of back and forth in my head thinking about this. Once I got past that stage, then what I started to do was, right, so then you have a decision to make of, do you start your own business completely from scratch, or do you buy an existing business, right? And I felt, it's just kind of interesting how things turned out, but I felt that, it was less risky to get an existing business than, that presumably there's a whole story behind this that we'll get to, that, is like less risky, one that's established, and you have to pay more for it, right?
Right.
Than it is to start one from scratch, right? And so I literally spent several years meeting with business brokers and going through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of businesses, visiting them, analyzing them, reading about them, trying to find one that appealed to me and made sense financially, and it was very hard. One of the things that I ran into, and I'll just give some advice to folks out there. So, if this was just my experience, if you're looking to buy a business and if you're not able to, don't have the skill to analyze the financials yourself, by all means, you should hire an expert. I have some expertise, so I know how to read, financial statements and things like that.
Right.
But one of the things I saw time and time again was I'd look at the financial statements and a business, on paper wasn't doing well. And then they would tell me, well, this is like an all cash business and the owner's like really making, like $300,000 a year, even though like the tax return says they lost 20,000. And I wasn't good. I didn't trust that at all. And I definitely would recommend staying away from those things, because I saw many of these businesses that were up for sale that, allegedly were making a lot of money, and on paper were showing that they were losing money. And, and I passed on every single one of them.
And David, before you move onto that, I just want to ask you something that about picking up the business. You're talking about you research the industry, you look at the finance, but you also lack what you went into. What if you are brought a business that the finances are looking good, it looks lucrative, but you don't have any knowledge or anything about that? Should you just pursue the business that you have passion over, or should you also look into the things that can bring you profit and just move on with life?
Yeah. So one thing I would say, and that's a wonderful question. One, I think it's really important to not just focus on, is this business making a lot of money or not, but finding something that you really are passionate about and will enjoy doing, because almost invariably, no matter what, you're going to go through some very challenging times, and it's really important, not just the end point of, I'll say how much money you make, but it's really important to enjoy the journey along the way and finding something that, is really of interest to you. And I'll give you a really good example about this in a minute. I still remember this, is very, very important. And I'll give you an example. Actually, one of the businesses that I looked at that I'll say was legitimate, and I passed on because it was a blinds like window treatments kind of business. And it was very successful and well established. And I remember going to visit it because actually I was intrigued by the money, at first. And I was just like bored to tears. I just could not picture myself doing that kind of work, and they'd actually manufactured the blinds themselves and all this stuff. And it just I just couldn't get excited about it. And ultimately, after looking for, several years at businesses, I settled upon an area that I'm really passionate about, which is exercise and health and fitness. And I'll say kind of stumbled upon, if you will, this fitness center that was up for sale. And, I mentioned just a couple minutes ago of, you have kind of two ways about going into business, right? One is start one yourself from scratch or buy an existing one. And I made the comment, right, that, it's you would think is less risky, right, buying an existing established business rather than starting one from scratch. And well, so as it turned out, I went through all the financial records on this business and everything checked out, right? And it was this fitness center, and I just love that kind of stuff. And I was really excited about it, scared, but excited, right? And well, I buy this business and, had looked through all the financial records, and very quickly I'm like, where are the sales? Where are the sales? Where are the sales? And this thing is just like hemorrhaging, and I shortly thereafter found out that the owner, I can read financial statements, but he had given me fraudulent financial statements.
That doesn't sound good.
And I was very young at the time. I was not quite even 32 years old yet. So this goes back a number of years. So I wasn't, as well established financially back then at age 30, about 31 or so, as I am now. And here it was, I had a lease with the landlord that I'm on the hook for. That's like $100,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And this business is losing lots of money. And I'll tell you, it was scary. It was really scary. And, I'll say, though, I learned a great deal from that experience. So at first, what I did, and it was very counterproductive, I learned quickly, is I felt sorry for myself. I complained to everyone that would listen. I cried at night. Honestly, I was, it was very, very upsetting. I had worked very, very hard to save up money, to kind of get to that point. And here it was, like it was going to be like in a blink of an eye, I'm like going to go bankrupt and stuff, and I just, I called a lawyer up, explained what happened, found like the best lawyer in the area for this kind of stuff. And well, he investigated and found that the previous owner didn't have any money. So it's like, great. I go to court and I sue him and they say, well, you win, Mr. Freedman. Well, win what? He doesn't have anything, So, one of my laws of success, as I call them, that I wrote is, I got a lot of them, but one is like that I like is the law of perseverance. And the way that one goes is impossible is a temporary state for those willing to do whatever it takes. It's a permanent state for those who give up. And what I realized when I was in this situation, and several months went by, all I did was complain and feel sorry for myself and cry at night. And the more I did that, the worse the business got.
David, right? as you continue the story, I want you to hold that thought when talking about the law of perseverance and how you struggle a lot. What are your thoughts about people that go into debt to get a business? When it comes to finance, what do you think? And do you think is a good idea? Is it a bad idea? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, so another really good question. I mean, I'll say in general, like most, if you're going to business, I was pretty good at managing my money, and basically I paid cash for this business. Vast majority of times people aren't doing that.
Right.
Right. And so, I think it's a good thing, and to borrow wisely, and take on some debt. Nothing wrong with that. So it's just part of it. And, the thing too is, to get something good in life, invariably involves, some risk, right? So no risk, no reward, right? So the bigger the risk you take, the bigger the potential reward there is. So that's just part of it. Is in general, taking on some debt. Be smart about it.
Right.
Don't get yourself in over your head.
Right.
And I'll share this with you too. And one of the things I don't know, Adam, if we talked about a little bit a month or so ago, is I when I had this business, so I also I'm not afraid of hard work.
Right.
And I also maintained my full-time job in finance. And between, I'd work there all day, on the weekends sometimes too. And at night and on the weekends, I would go to my fitness center business. And, I had no days off for, I did this for 7 years and 3 months before I finally got a really great offer that was just too good to turn down. And I sold the business. But I worked, a good, like 90 hours a week, no days off for 7 years and 3 months.
So the goal was kind of to maintain your cash flow. And I want you to go back to the story about, how.
Yeah. And just before you go, just this is about finance again. I also have a finance question. Actually, there is a meme that is, that it goes on the internet a lot. I love memes and I love being on Twitter. So there's a meme, people saying that, well, if you save the $5 that you buy Starbucks coffee every day, by the end of the year, you're going to have what? I think like $12,000 something.
Wow.
and so on. And then I saw that somebody else actually did the math correctly. It was less than that. And they went, well, that amount of money is still not enough for you to buy a house or anything. That's just enjoy the coffee. So I want to talk about the money part. You say that at the age of 30 or 31, around that age, assuming that you had been working for around 30 years, not 30 years, like 10 years, assuming that you graduated from college at 22 and you are going into, by 31, 32 years old, you are into this industry, you're an accountant somewhere, or you're in sales. Mm-hmm. What are the strategies? Because we have a lot of people who listen to us. They are within that age group between 22 and about 30, 32, to 34 mostly.
35 mostly.
Yeah, for 35. So now, what are the strategies that you went, what are the disciplines and the things that you had to go through for you to actually secure that type of money during those 10 years?
Yep. So great question. So, I had this initial job with the Campbell Soup Company, and at the same time I had this goal. I quickly realized, when I saw these people losing their jobs after 35 plus years of going into business for myself, and knowing that again, to just kind of mitigate risk, that the less you borrow, right, and the more you fund yourself, the less chance you have of defaulting on a loan and, getting yourself in trouble. And so I worked very, very hard at my job at Campbell Soup. And every year I got promoted up 1 or 2 levels, got, very large increases, and lived frugally, and just, I socked away a lot of money during that period of time. And, I didn't, and I still don't, I didn't drive a fancy car. I still don't drive a fancy car. I live way, way below my means, and I see other people, and again, there isn't a right or wrong in life. It's like, what's important to you, what makes you happy. At the end of the day, the goal of life is to be happy, right?
That's right.
And so, if getting a brand new car every, couple years, and, spending all your money on that, if that's what makes you happy in life, go for it. That wasn't my goal. And so, I remember actually my first car that I ever bought. It was a 1990 Pontiac Grand Am, and I held on to that thing for 220,000 miles.
They probably called you back.
And I finally gave it up when it had this bad oil leak, and it was going to cost over $2,000 to fix it. But my point is, I wasn't buying a new car every several years, or getting a really expensive car. And I remember many years ago actually reading this article, and I don't remember the exact particulars, but it was talking about cars, and how comparing people that held their cars onto them for a very long time versus people that, every so many years, a couple of years were getting a new one. These people that held onto their cars, on average were retiring, I don't know, 5 years sooner.
Wow.
Just with, something like that, and, I see people paying $50, $60, $70, $80,000 for a car, and again, if that's what makes you happy, that's, we're all different.
If it makes you happy and you have the money for it, because it makes people happy, and then you're making $500 a week and driving a $70,000 vehicle, to me, just doesn't make sense mathematically.
Agreed. So I've always, ever since I was a kid, have always been able to have like, I don't know, I'll call it like a laser beam focus on whatever goal I had, at the time. And, so I had this goal of saving my money to, put towards a business and everything. And, I lived way below my means, and I saved, I saved it. And I also kind of, and I waited till I was like in a good position, because I didn't really want to get a business and then like, lose my home and everything else.
Right.
If it didn't go well, so, you gotta figure out what's really important to you in life. And, there's a saying I heard, I'm not sure who this comes from, so I don't want to take credit for it because it's not mine, but it goes like, if you want your life to be easy, do what is hard. And if you want your life to be hard, do what is easy. And when you really step back and think about it, it's doing those hard things, up front early in your life that, if you're willing to do them and make sacrifices, you set yourself up for a much easier life down the road, and so that's what I tell folks is, go all out, do it when you're young, and don't be afraid to put in the hard work. And I've never been afraid of hard work, and I'll share this with you. And I don't necessarily recommend this, so I think I've kind of really pushed myself to the limit. But when I would drive home at night from this fitness center, like I said, I was working like a good 90 hours, a week, no days off. This might sound kind of crazy, but I literally, when I would drive home at night with one hand, guys will think I'm crazy, I literally would punch my leg with one hand while I was driving so I wouldn't fall asleep at the wheel.
Wow.
I don't necessarily recommend it, but that is how hard I push myself. I push myself to the absolute limit. And I'm not saying you need to go push that hard to be, successful, or anything, but in general, most good things in life require a lot of hard work,
right?
A lot of patience, perseverance, self-belief, and a really good attitude, and to, and a lot of focus and just determination. And, I listen to a lot of, I work out in the mornings, like several hours typically every day, get up real early and stuff. And I'll just, while I'm on that subject, I will say to anyone out there, for me, one of my very top priorities is staying in tip-top physical condition. And because without your health, you really don't have anything. And it's really hard to be happy if you're not healthy. Just think like when you have a bad cold, right? Again, it's obviously a lot worse than that. It's hard to enjoy the day when, you don't feel well. So I really advocate, whatever it is in life, make time for your health, eat healthy, get yourself on a regular exercise program. And, if, people say, well, I don't have time to exercise, even when I was working 90 hours a week, I found time to work out and everything. We have 86,400 seconds in a day. Everyone gets the same amount of time, and you make time for what you choose to make time for. That's right. And people will say, well, I don't have time to work out or whatever. If if you don't make time for your health,
Yeah.
you're going to at some point have to make time for dealing with sickness.
Absolutely.
So,
and I know we boil down and talk a little bit more about your morning routine. And not only that, we also talk about your time management strategies for someone who's as busy as you, how you manage your time. But before we get down there, I know, sometimes you listen to a story, it's like, why didn't he finish that story? I still want us to go back and finish the story on where you finally realize that you got yourself into a bad deal. You're crying every single night, and you're just wondering, like, what did I get myself into? What was the turning point from, because your story tells, and you tell a little bit more about it, how you turned that business around. So what was that turning point where you were like, you know what, pick yourself back together and go to work? And what was that process like in order for you to move that gym from something that was not successful and not bringing in any money to something that actually became very lucrative? As you mentioned that after 7 years, you got an offer that was just too good to say not to.
Yeah. So I'll first start by saying this, because I think it's a really important lesson that I want to share with folks. There's a saying that I like, which is, if you want to take the island, burn the ships or burn the boats. And, I want to talk about really the significance of that statement. And for me, so now in my case, and I'm glad it worked out this way. It didn't feel like it at the time.
Right.
So the boats were burned for me. Okay. So, the best lawyer couldn't get me out of this. Mommy and daddy couldn't bail me out of this situation. I was backed into a corner, and I had a choice of, I could either go bankrupt and lose a ton of money, right, at a very young age, and then spend years trying to dig myself out of it, or I could give it my all and try and figure out a solution to this, and I have to say, one of my learnings from that is, people talk about having a plan B, right? And I'll tell you, I am so glad that, the boats or ships were burned for me, because honestly, if the lawyer had said, oh yeah, we can take him to court and he's got all this money, I'll get you this full refund and get you out of the business, I would have jumped on it just like that,
right,
in a heartbeat. And, it turned out, that me having to figure this thing out and being backed into the corner was one of the very best things that ever happened to me in my life. And so what I want to say to folks is, it's a little scary, but, do not have a plan B. If you're going into some business, it's not going to be easy. And if you have a plan B, as soon as things get difficult, and I can almost guarantee you they will, you will abandon your goal and fall back on your plan B. And an example I'll give that, of, I'll say outside of businesses, but related, is kids in college.
Right. And,
someone say that wants to go into theater and get on Broadway or something like that. And, they'll major in theater and everything, but they'll have a plan B. Maybe they'll major in, some business field as their plan B, right? Yeah. So then what happens, right? They graduate, they trying to get into theater, and after a year or two, right, it doesn't work out. And it's okay, well, I'll just go take that job in finance, right? Instead.
Right. And the dream dies.
and that's it. Yeah. And things like that, most likely, right? Obviously there's exceptions to everything, but most likely you're going to have to fail many, many times. And typically, the bigger the dream you're going after, the more times you're going to have to fail. before you get to where you want to be. So I really would encourage people to do not have a fallback. Decide unequivocally what you want to do and go after it, and to not have a plan B. Because gosh, if I had a plan B on that business,
You'll
or
be
like
out
I
of it.
said, or if a lawyer could have gotten me out of it or whatever, I would have missed out on, a really amazing thing
I
That's
do
very
think
deep.
I do think this is really good, because we have a lot of our listeners actually in that situation. I have my own little brother. Actually, he has great plans to go into medical school, and he's been busy also figuring out, okay, what if the medical school thing doesn't work? And there's always a say that, and I think I've always been against that say that do not put all your eggs in one basket.
And I used to be the same way.
Yeah. So, but now I really don't think that way is much, and especially with the time I've spent in business, is that just give it all your all, as you just said. And I'm gonna go into just a little bit. Deviate a little from what we are talking about here. And I'm going to talk here about a little bit more of growing a business and growing a company. Now, you mentioned earlier that you could either get your own thing started, which means you can come from 0 to 1. That's a whole new concept. You can be the creator of the new Facebook. Or...
Right.
You can buy something that is already widely available, like you can buy a gym. Now, this gym industry is a very crowded space. You're competing against Planet Fitness that has tons of money, and they're cheaper. They also have better equipment than what you have. Now, how do you, as a small business owner, in a very crowded industry, how do you set yourself apart?
Right. So it's a really great question. And, for me, among a number of things, the way I differentiated myself was really, I'm just going to say, a total, complete focus on customer satisfaction and providing
that was
them
after you found out that your business was a flunk. You still decided to go for it.
I'm sorry.
I say that was right after you found out that the business that you bought was you were kind of stuck into that business and cornered, that you started doing using those strategies, right?
Yes, and really what I ultimately did, and was I literally sat down with a piece of paper and a pen, and I drew a little circle in the middle, which was a customer, and then I drew a big circle around that one and kind of sliced it into these pie slices, and within each one of them, I wrote down the different things that I could do to satisfy and influence the customer to keep the ones that I had and to get more of them. And I literally, I did a little research, used some common sense as well. And that's, one of my laws of success, and this is really what I used, is, I call it the law of smallness, which is conquering a mountain is nothing more than climbing a series of small and manageable hills, one after another. And what I did was, I took this daunting task of this business that's losing all this money and breaking it down into these small little manageable pieces, each piece being something that I could do, that I had control over, that I could influence the customers and keep the ones that I have and get more customers.
David,
and
I think you have there. You can go a little. Can you explain more about that? The things that you had control over the things that you could not control in order to influence the
yes.
customer. Because I kind of feel like most of the times we're struggling after the things that we cannot control, and then they make us lose peace. Can you just expand a little some on that?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up too, because another one of my laws of success, and I joke around. I've got a law for everything. I got a law of success for like peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So, but one of them, is I call it the law of destiny, which is when you focus on the many things you can control rather than the few things you can't, you gain control of your destiny. And so, this sheet of paper that I divided into pie slices was simply, I'm going to focus on all the things I can control. I can't control what a competitor does. They can do whatever they want, right? But what can I do? What are all the things? What are the things that matters to customers that I have control over? So just, and all industries, have differences. So in mine, just a couple real simple things was, I learned at the time, a number of years ago, little research that, well, what's the most important thing in a fitness center to women? And what's the most important thing to men? So anyway, what I learned at the time was for women, the most important thing wasn't necessarily the equipment, not that that wasn't important, but it was actually cleanliness of the facility. And for guys, the most important thing was actually the equipment. So that, just two simple things, right? You don't need to be Albert Einstein. So those are things I had control over, the cleanliness of my facility and the equipment that I had. So what did I do, right? Again, this is all like simple stuff that anyone can do, right? None of this stuff in general is hard, okay?
Right.
It really isn't. And so what I did was, and I'll give you an example of just how I did things a little bit differently than the previous owner. So, I got some training for like a week or two after I bought the business from him. And I remember him telling me, okay, so Dave, then at the end of the night, you go around and you wipe down all the equipment and make it nice and clean for the next day, right? Well, that sounds logical, right? And definitely something you should do.
Right.
And then I'm like thinking to myself, well, what about during the day when all these people are there and they're working out and they don't see anyone wiping down the equipment? And keep in mind, this is before COVID. This is years before COVID. So things are a little different. So I'm like thinking like if no one sees the employees cleaning, they're going to wonder, is this place clean? Or am I sitting down on a piece of equipment that's been like sweated on 150 times, right?
I agree.
And so, I put in policies, procedures, for folks on my team. And, and I did all the same work that, my team did as well. So, I'm not too good to do anything. And so I was like, guys, if you're not busy training someone, go out there when it's really busy and wipe down the equipment. We want the members to see us cleaning the equipment, Now, maybe that doesn't sound like such a novel thing these days and everything, but
right.
Again, this is a number of years ago. And so, people could see us cleaning, and I developed simple things like a checklist of like, okay, every so, whatever, hour, 45 minutes, like go in and check out the bathrooms, make sure the bathrooms are clean, right? So like a simple thing like cleanliness for the facility, something I could control. I can't control how clean or dirty another facility is,
right,
but I have control over mine, right? As far as equipment goes, right? It's interesting. There were several fitness centers in the area that had much more square footage than I did, but with some creativity and what have you, and careful arranging and planning, I was able to fit more equipment in my fitness center that was, in some cases half the size of others. And so when you came into my fitness center, let's just say you're going through your exercise routine, and maybe one of your exercises is to jump on a chest press machine. I didn't have one of them. I had like 4 different kinds of chest press machines. And so even though I would get very crowded, when I first started with this business, that it was down to about 175 members. I grew it to over 2,000 members.
That's impressive, David.
And so anyway, with that many members, no one likes to go to, if you're into working out, you don't want to have to wait, to get on your machine. Now, maybe a minute or so, but you don't want to be waiting 5, 10, 15 minutes. Like that's no fun. So I had an abundance of equipment in my facility, and different types too as well. So again, and obviously, that appealed to the women as well. Equipment, I think, was number 2 of importance to them, whereas to the gentlemen, it was number 1. But simple things like that, and going through and laying out on this sheet of paper all the different things that I had control over, and attacking them one at a time. And that's really what I did. And, one of the other things, and I think this, really relates to pretty much about any business, is, I got to really know my customers on a first name basis. And I recognize with some businesses that could be hard, if you own Walmart, how are you going to really get to know, you know what I mean? A little different, but and I'll give you an example. So I still remember this, was a late afternoon on the weekend, and it was getting close to closing. It was down to maybe about 25 or so people left in the fitness center. And a new potential customer came to the door, right? And came in, was asking me some questions, was shopping around to try and find a fitness center, and asked me, well, like, what's different about yours? I've been to a lot of them, right? And I said, well, I can tell you, we will really get to know you here, and we will work very close with you to help you reach your goals. And they were like a little skeptical. I was like, I kind of heard that. And I said, watch this. And it just so happened at the time, I knew every single member that was in the fitness center, first name and last name. I knew if they had a brother or sister or mother or father that was a member. And I went around and I just pointed, see that? That's Mary Smith. She's been a member now for over 5 years, and her brother John also works out here too. And I just went around one by one, and I really focused on learning my customers' names, and also made that a very high priority for, the folks that worked for me as well. And so, really, establishing this relationship with people really goes a long way. And, and if you own something like, say, like a Walmart, maybe you're not going to necessarily get to know everyone, but you sure as heck can be really nice and go out of your way to be helpful to everyone, and make every experience they have in the store,
Amazing.
a really, really good experience. And an example that, I like to give, and it's kind of, we're talking about like large stores, is, I remember, now and then, I have to go to like Home Depot or Lowe's, something like that, pick up, something for the house. And I'm a very busy man. I don't have time to, spend 20 minutes looking for like, a little nut or bolt or something like that, And, so I'll go into a store like that and this is how you don't want to do things. And I'll say, and I might bring in one from home, like, see this like nut and bolt, like I need 5 more of them.
Right.
Can you help me? And they'll say like, well, walk down that aisle. I think it's on like aisle 37, make a right. And I think it's on the left side about halfway down. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's like, really? And then I'll just politely say like, oh, would you mind showing me, taking me there? And then typically, they'll say, oh, okay, sure. Ideally, they would offer that up first, right?
Yeah.
And I remember actually, it's not that long ago, just going to one of those stores, needing something like that, and requested that they take me there after them first kind of pointing and go here and there, and the person that worked there, that was kind of the expert, couldn't find the part that I was looking for initially, and spent, I don't know, at least 5 minutes. And so like, you think about it, your own employee that knows the store can't find this right away. And then you're going to send a customer who knows nothing about your store to try and find this little odd and end.
Yeah, right? That's very interesting.
And so, what I would say is, things like that. It's like if when I had the fitness center, if someone came over and said, gosh, it's only my second workout on this new program. I don't remember exactly how to do, this exercise. Like I wouldn't stand there and say, well, here's what you do. I'd say, here, let me show you. And I'd walk over to them and I'd get on the equipment myself. I would demonstrate it. I'd have them get on it. I'd watch them do it. And I'd make sure they feel comfortable. Not rocket science, right? But just simple things like that. And doing them consistently, time after time, really makes such a difference. And
David, just so that I just want to make sure that I recap a little bit of what you've talked about so far, that
sure.
We don't get lost. As far as struggling small businesses, what can they do to improve their business? You talk about looking at the things that you can control, like pretty much listing out every single thing about your business and looking at what you can control. Then you also mentioned about raising the standard of those little things you can control, making them better. You mentioned to getting to know your customers. You have to know your customers and you have to know the needs of your customers. What exactly do your customers need? And then you've also mentioned about consistency. Being consistent in those little things can help you make a difference. That's how you turn your business around.
That's a real, And I'll share this with you too. And you talked a little bit about this, about your standards. And this was like the very first, law of success, as I call them, that I wrote. And I really think it's a key to just about everything in life, really. And I call it the law of standards. And the way it goes is, if you set your standards above the level that all others have set for themselves and do what is required to meet them, success is inevitable. And so, whether it's your business, your personal health, or anything, if you step back and think about it, the easiest way to improve in life, in anything, is to raise your standards. And so just, when you think about it, someone say that's not healthy and wants to get in shape and improve their health and ultimately succeeds. Like what did they do? Right? they raise their standards. They raise their standards for the kind of food they put in their mouth, as well as their level of activity.
Right.
Or, likewise, Mark, you and I were talking a little bit earlier before this about like reading and learning. And so, that's another thing. So what do you do as far as, continuous improvement and learning more? A great way is to read. So if you're only reading one book a year, right? What do you do if you want to learn more? Essentially, you raise your standards and you read more books.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And David, yes, because we have passed an hour already, and we wanted to section this into a few more episodes for our listeners, so they really have to digest everything that's we have talked about, and we really get to know you more, and so that we can transition now to a new aspect of the conversation that we want to talk about. And this is going to switch the gears from just business to actually leadership, because you cannot really succeed in a business without the proper leadership and the proper capacity for you to bring the change. And I think now starting this new part, and since we are transitioning, and this, if anybody's just joining us for the second time to continue the conversation with David here on the following the previous part of the conversation on business, now coming into leadership. Leadership comes with challenges. It comes with complication. It comes with so much responsibility that you have to take. Now, I'm going to rewind and go back into your time as a leader and in a growing industry in the company that you used to work for. How did you see, what was your perspective on leadership in that company when you are just stepping out of college, 20-something-year-old, looking at your future, so bright and thinking highly of yourself to accomplish something, because that's how you feel when you are walking the stage. You feel like this is the greatest moment of your life. And now that you were walking and now you are embracing it in this industry, how do you view, what was your perspective on leadership then?
Yeah, so, I'll say this, and it helped me in my business. I've worked for 3 different companies over the years, and the first one was the Campbell Soup Company, and then after that Alpo Pet Foods, and then the third one, which I've been at for coming up on 28 years, I'm proud to say, is Lehigh Valley Health Network. And I always paid very close attention to leadership and the kinds of things that they did and the messages that they would convey. And I really took them to heart. And at all 3 companies, and particularly the one that I'm at, just that the leadership is just truly amazing. And, just really, maybe it sounds like a cliche, but, just like a recurring theme at all of them was, it sounds simple, but it's like focusing on the customer and satisfying your customer and giving them value and everything. And that's, it's just one of the things that just got kind of beaten into my head, if you will, from the leadership from my very first job to now. And that's what I took, really, when I had this business of my own and was in kind of this scary situation of like, at the end of the day, it's about satisfying your customer and providing more value than your competition
Right.
can do. And so that's one of the most important things. The other thing I learned too, just in terms of leadership, is really the importance. Well, number one, I think it really all starts with, in order to satisfy your customers and really make them happy, it starts with making your employees, or where I work, we call them our colleagues.
That's a good point.
Very, very happy. Because if you don't have happy employees, they're less inclined to make your customers happy. And so, for myself, and I'll give you a quick example, as far as, leadership and how I treated my employees. So in the fitness center industry business, one of the problems is employee turnover.
Right.
It's just like constant. Well, that wasn't the case with my business. So I had two key positions at my fitness center, but besides myself. One was sort of like a manager, ultimately made him senior director of like the fitness center. And then I had a director of the aerobics program, as we called it, aerobics back then. And those two people, they were with me from start to finish, from the time I had the business all the way till the time I sold it. And, they were really key people, and I treated them extraordinarily well. And I treated all my, not just the key positions, but I treated everyone extraordinarily well. And so when you do that, right, and you then ask of them to do certain things with how you interact with customers. So like one of the, I'll say really official policies I put in place was just with greeting customers, when they would come in through the front door, and if you're behind the front desk, you were required to give them a sincere, very friendly hello, and ideally by their first name. And if you couldn't know all 2,000 plus, but if you didn't know their name, like kind of after they walked by, you'd take a glance at the, when they signed in, and say, okay, that's Mary, that's John. And you try and remember it for the next time. And likewise, when they left, it was like, oh, great seeing you, John. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, something like that. And, sounds like a little thing, but, how many, think of like, you walk into, whether it's, Walmart, Home Depot, or just about any store, like this. Generally, like, does anyone say hello? Like, you could walk right by an employee. Do they even say anything? In fact, most of the time they turn and look away, right? Could you imagine like walking into, Lowe's or Home Depot, or it could be any store, and the person, like, they have someone near the front door and greets you and says, gives you a warm welcome and says, is there anything I could help you with? Help you find. Right.
And David, it's so funny that you're mentioning this. My wife always thinks I'm too picky, but if I go into a store, especially a small business, and I don't feel welcome in the place, I literally never go back to the same store. And I'll tell them, hey, you go do the shopping, but I'm not going back there. And sometimes we don't really realize, why do I like this store better than I do like the other store? The little things like that do matter.
Absolutely. And, in terms of leadership and everything, I think one of the really important things of being a good leader is to empower your employees. And you've obviously got to have a good recruitment process to have employees that you can empower.
Before you go there, this is a very interesting subject, and I know we can spend the whole night just talking about that, right? You just picked up a job, and you inherited some employees with their culture and their way of doing things, and you want to turn things around. How do you get to the point? Because you said you implemented a standard at your gym. You said everybody, we need to clean the equipment while people are watching and stuff like that. But you are not in the gym from Monday through Friday. How do you even know that your employees are doing what they're supposed to do? And even in stores, you're a manager.
Yeah.
You just inherit employees, and sometimes you don't even have decisions over who is hiring them. You just inherit them. How do you go about raising your leadership, but also empowering your leadership onto them so that they do actually the things that you have in your vision, and they can carry them out without you being there like a policeman watching out everything they're doing?
Right. So, it's you're giving me flashbacks of when I took over here. So, I still remember this, and it was just, the employees that I inherited. There was a couple key exceptions. Just quite frankly, they were just terrible. I don't know how else to say it. And the previous owner had very low standards, and the way he ran his business too. This amazed me. It was like the employees, while they're on the job, they were like working out on the equipment themselves. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? It's like you're here to work, And so that was like the first thing. I'm like going in, I'm looking around, and I got these I got customers in the gym and stuff, and there's employees working out while they're on the job. I'm like, no, that's not gonna work, guys. And I just you just can't be successful like that, or certainly can't optimize your success that way. And I basically had a long talk with folks and told them kind of what we had to do, and some just very quickly just quit on their own, and others I just kind of had to let go. And one of the key people I kept was just, he's fabulous, and I took very good care of him, was, a manager that I had, and ultimately kind of promoted him up and created these higher levels to recognize his good work and what have you. And, I empowered him because I couldn't be there every single hour. I was there at nights and on the weekends, but I couldn't be there during the day, Monday through Friday. I had a full-time job, and would often work late at my full-time job. And, so finding the right people and treating them really well, so I would say he was probably making at least, $20,000 more working for me than he could have anywhere else.
Oh, wow.
And so I treated him really well, but it was a good investment though, and he did a fabulous job for me. And I'll say no one ever treats a business like the owner does,
That's right.
But he was the closest, you could really get as treating the business like an owner. And it really tied into, again, just how I treated him. And so how you treat your employees is ultimately going to ripple through to whether you have good customer satisfaction or not. And I'd say it's really, really important as a leader is to, treat people well, because if you treat them well and that's what they're used to, then people that are working for them, they're going to treat them well. Also, you treat them badly, that's kind of like all they know.
Right.
And obviously there's exceptions, to these things. And so I think that's a really important thing as a leader is to treat your employees exceptionally well, and ultimately to empower them. And, when I say empower them, again, in my business, or I'll backtrack a little, like, think if you've ever gone to a business, maybe it's some, big store or whatever it might be, you bought something, there's a problem with it, maybe you drive 20 minutes or 30 minutes to the store to like return it. You get there and there's, some low level, I don't mean that in a bad way, person behind the desk there. And they say, well, I'm sorry, I can't refund your money. A manager has to be here, and the manager is like, on their lunch break, or they're out sick today. You'll have to come back tomorrow, right? And I'm like, I just drove 30 minutes here. You can see this thing is broken,
right?
And I got to drive 30 minutes home. Now you're telling me I need to come back tomorrow? You got to be kidding me, right? And so, I always empowered my employees. If something came about with a customer, maybe we just got this onslaught of new people wanting to check out the club, and it's like, we don't know who to help first, right? It's like crazy. So unfortunately, you have to sometimes keep people waiting longer, than you would like to. So, they were empowered. It's like, guys, if you ever have to keep someone unfortunately waiting, obviously, apologize, be real nice, but give them something. Give them something free. I don't care. Give them a protein shake. Give them a fat burner drink. If it's something like really bad, give them a free shirt. I don't care, And it's not like, they didn't have to be like, oh my God, like what, can I give this person, a free like $15 t-shirt? Is Dave going to get mad at me? I'd be mad if you didn't, right? and we lost the customer,
Right.
And so empowering your employees to take good care of your customers and to rectify, I'll say service breakdowns, that and you're going to have them no matter what. They need to be empowered to handle them right on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah, Dave. And just to add to that very same question and to just extend the conversation, leadership is influence. And for you to have influence, you have to have character. I'm actually currently reading a book on the power of character in leadership. It's very interesting reading because it's showing flows in leadership at every level. Even at a place where I used to think that this was spotless leadership in the government, that's people look up to, especially when it comes to political leaders. I still saw a lot of the flaws because of lack of character. Now, my question will go toward the character aspect of leadership. What do you think, and based on your experience, what do you think are the ideal character in leadership, especially when you're running a small business, when every small detail matters and every tiny flaw in leadership could significantly affect your business?
Yeah. So, as far as you're saying, like what characteristics are important. So, number one is, integrity, and there's a saying, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing, always do the right thing. And sometimes it could be hard or tempting, not to, but always do the right thing. That's number one. Other just key characteristics is, in all my years, I've never ever lost my cool with anyone. If and maybe I should have sometimes, right? But if someone has, maybe said something inappropriate, or done something inappropriate, I never ever lose my cool, stay calm. I might wait till after I go home and I get in my car and maybe I bang my fist against the door, and maybe say a couple of choice words, but no one will ever see me get angry or lose my cool. So I think it's just it's very important, is to always remain calm, keep your wits about you, and you really have to be careful with your words that you use. Once they come out of your mouth, you can't put them back. And it's kind of like if you think of your words like toothpaste, in a toothpaste tube. If you squirt that toothpaste out of the tube, and think of them as your words, and perhaps words you wish you regret, you can't get them back in that tube.
Right.
Once they're out, they're out. And so you really need to be careful, when you're talking to folks, your choice of words, and sometimes too, it's sometimes the best thing is just to remain silent.
Yes.
As well. Particularly in a difficult situation, maybe where you got to give some things some thought. Don't just blurt something out. Sometimes it's best to remain silent for a while, or just say, let me give that some thought, and why don't we talk about it tomorrow? And give yourself some time to think about things. And I've had some challenging situations, with employees in the past, and I spent a great deal of time, whenever possible, preparing for, like a challenging conversation, and picking my words very carefully. And so, tying that into character, being, perceived and known as, someone that, doesn't lose their temper and or lose their patience. Right. Are very important. And I kind of call patience, really, it's really like a superpower, I think, is having patience. And I like to think that I have, essentially unlimited patience. And it's not only part of your character, but it's really also a key part of success, whether it's in business or in life. And people appreciate, when you have great patience for them. Maybe you have someone, an employee that, is maybe new on the job and is struggling, and, they're going to really appreciate that you have patience for them. Right. And I'll have to say this too, a lot of times I've learned things, and from, I'll say, people that did the opposite. And I'll give you an example. So like I grew up and I had the most, wonderful dad, and not to say my dad's better than anyone else's. A lot of people have wonderful dads. My dad was fantastic father. He's 90 years old now and he's got some issues going on, but he was like my hero. I always describe him as he was like Babe Ruth, Will Chamberlain, and like Joe Namath all wrapped up into one, and was just a great guy. But my dad's one fault was a lack of patience. He was a very impatient man, and I don't believe in making excuses. I tie it into actually his business that he had. He had some very, very challenging clientele that he had to deal with that would try just about anyone's patience. I don't use that excuse. I don't believe in excuses though. But anyway, I saw that undesirable characteristic in my father, and I could have easily became the same as my dad, right? And someone could ask me, Dave, why are you so impatient all the time? Well, that's what my dad was like. That's what I grew up with.
Right.
Instead, I was like, I don't ever want to be like that, right? And so you can learn just as much, sometimes more so, I think, from people that are doing the opposite of what's really desirable.
Yes.
And taking the separate path. It's kind of like you hear a story maybe about twins that grew up, with a parent maybe that was an alcoholic, right? And one of the twins becomes an alcoholic and one doesn't, right? And you talk to them and you ask the one twin, gosh, you're an alcoholic. Like, why is that? It's like, well, I grew up with a dad that way. That's all I knew, right? So of course, it's not my fault, right? Yes, the other twin, right? That's not. And that twin tells you, well, my dad was an alcoholic. I'd never want to be like that and expose my family to someone like that. So it's really a choice.
Right.
People... Yeah. It's a conscious choice that we make, and it also, just related to characteristics of a good leader is attitude. Having a really positive attitude in life, and this one I think maybe might be my most, I'll say popular.
But you also have one of those, the love attitudes. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
Yeah, and that one feels like that one might be the most popular one. But this law of attitude that I wrote, and it's really such an important characteristic for not just a leader but for everyone. Is it goes, how things appear to the naked eye doesn't really matter. It's the lens you decide to view them through that counts. And that will make all the difference. And some of the key words in that was, it's the lens you decide to view them through.
So it's kind of a choice that you make.
Decide. It's a conscious decision. And, it's really, when you think about it, when you wake up in the morning, it's probably subconsciously, but it's really like maybe the first decision you make every day is whether you're going to be positive or negative, right? And it's a conscious decision to have that positivity, and I don't know that there's anyone that really likes being around a negative person. Right?
No, I agree. Yeah,
it's just not fun. So I really think. As far as, characteristics go, whether it's for a leader or anyone, is having that positive attitude in life. And, there's almost without exception, a positive spin, positive way of looking at something,
right.
No matter how bad it is. There is almost always a positive spin, if you will, that you can put on it. And so again, another really critical, I think, characteristic for a good leader. And I don't know that that's really talked about that much when they, if you pick up books on leadership about, positive attitude and,
right.
and it being a choice. But I really think that is a very important characteristic. So.
I agree. And to just add to that question, David, when we were looking at this side from the leaders, but as a leader or as an employer, as a business owner, what are the things that you look for in your employees, and what kind of makes the person a good employee, a person who can actually grow within the company and become, bring some positive impact for a business?
That's a great question, and it's so funny. I was talking about this with someone earlier today on my job. So I actually I have a new position in my department at work, and I was interviewing someone today, actually, for this job. and was later talking to someone else, and about like, well, what do I look for? Literally had this conversation with someone today, and so what I said was, so it's a position, it's a senior financial analyst position, right? That it's hiring for. And so what I tell people, and I'll give you a really good example, I think, is I look for the things that I can't teach when I hire someone. And specifically what I mean by that is, things like positive attitude and work ethic and, their disposition. Are they a pleasure to be with and talk to? Those kinds of things I find, work ethic and attitude and just pleasantness are really, like, I don't know. I'm not going to say that they're not teachable, but in general, people are either are that way
or they're not.
Or they are not.
Has
been my experience. And so I feel like anyone that's, I'll say a little bit above or just, average intelligence, I can teach them how to do a discounted cash flow analysis. I can teach that. I can't teach them to have a positive attitude and to treat others well and just to be a pleasure to work with, and I was actually, this person I was talking to earlier today about this, and I was giving an example related to Major League Baseball.
Right.
And so if you were to go to a Major League Baseball tryout camp, I went to one many years ago. I was a little kid, and my neighbor actually and a good friend of his were trying out. They were college baseball players. And so I don't know if they've changed things since, but the very first thing they did, I'll never forget this, at this tryout camp was, number one, was they first timed everyone in the 60-yard dash. The second thing they did, like if you were an outfielder, it was a little different if you were an infielder. They took all the outfielders out into deep right field. They then like hit them a long fly ball, and they had to throw that ball like all the way across the diamond to like third base and I think home. And then after they did the running and the throwing evaluations, they, and there could be maybe a couple hundred people, at the tryout camp. They first, they ranked everyone, and the first top 18 people, they put them in a game against each other, and all the other people, they just kind of gradually worked into the game. And so where I'm going with this is, so my neighbor's friend, his father was actually been a major league pitcher, went to the camp as well. And he didn't make the cut for like the highest 18 rated people. And so he just ultimately got into the game to bat, and he gets up and he hits a home run over the fence. Right. So you'd be like, wow, right? He's got a home run. You know what? The major league scouts didn't care, because his running speed and his throwing was not quite where it needed to be, and yes, you can make some slight improvements on how fast you can run and how hard you can throw. You can make some slight improvements, but you can either throw hard or you can't. You can either run fast or you can't. And so they can't teach those skills. You can make some slight improvements, but you can't teach them. Whereas, with a good athlete, they feel like, they can improve and teach them how to hit. So if they're not the best hitter, so if you could run fast and throw real hard, you had a shot, even if you weren't the best hitter, because they felt they could teach that. And so I kind of use that example when I'm hiring folks. I look for the things I can't teach. And that would be my, certainly, if I'm hiring for a senior financial analyst, if they have all sorts of great experience in doing the kinds of things on the job, obviously that's, a wonderful benefit. But if I have to choose between someone that excels in those things I can't teach and maybe has little experience versus someone that has a lot of experience and fails miserably in those areas that I can't teach, I can tell you that person will never have a shot with me. So I would say, if you're looking at, hiring folks, et cetera,
Right.
first screening thing is look for the things you can't teach.
Yeah,
That's very
and
interesting.
I'm just gonna go
question?
ahead.
Yeah.
I wanted to transition actually.
Yeah, that's what I was wanting to make sure that
Yeah.
we don't have, and I think we'll be closing this portion on leadership, and a little bit transition. David, you've been in finance for as long as you can remember life. You've seen numbers all your life, and the truth is, whether we like it or not, times are scary right now for a lot of people. Whether you, I'm a software engineer. You and I have talked about this before, and to be honest, the dream of software engineers is to work on some of the top-notch companies. You're talking about Google, Amazon, Facebook. You're talking about Twitter. But looking back now, I don't think anybody, when he looks at those companies, dreams about it. Just to signify about how hard the times have been for people in the industry. And let's talk a little bit about 2023. When you thinking about financial analysis, prediction, and things like that. And I'll let Adam go ahead. I know he has a burning question. We just want to pick your brain as a financial guy looking into 2023.
Yeah, just before we get there, actually, I wanted to ask some questions about the book that is upcoming before we can go into asking and talking, discussing a little bit about finance and the big financial markets. The laws of success that you came up with, and one thing that's from the previous question that you answered and what you're discussing about what you look for in a person that you can hire. And I'm going to go ahead and just speak on your book. And I wanted to bring that perspective in the book that you wrote. I just want to see how that fit in the law of difference. Now, if you can extend that a little bit just for a few minutes, on the law of difference and how to use that to look into hiring.
Right. So this law of difference, that I wrote and, applied to my business to turn it around from leaving money to making more than I really, could ever imagine,
Right.
It's a really simple law, but it's, great minds don't think alike. Great minds think differently.
Yeah.
And the way I spell the word differently when I write it is uppercase, lowercase, lowercase. So I write the word differently. And, it's really, in any time, whether times are going well or whether they're really challenging, thinking about things differently than, the competition does, or just how things have always been done, really is, a key differentiator, and really needed it particularly in challenging times. But I would say, whether you're in challenging times, whether it's like, there's a recession or not, or things are really good, I think there's just some, just key fundamental things that just never change regardless of the environment, for success, and I go back to, the law of attitude and having that positive attitude, and we talked about really getting to know your customers well, on ideally a first name basis whenever you can, perseverance and self-belief and all those kinds of things. And, we talked a little bit about like the law of, smallness. Conquering a mountain is nothing more than climbing a series of small and manageable hills, one after another. I'll share a little story about that too, real quickly.
Yeah.
But, really almost without exception, I never say 100% for anything, but almost without exception, any large, daunting task, in my case was this business that's like losing tons of money, can be broken down into small and manageable pieces. And, that you go after one by one. And the quick story I wanted to share with you about that law. So that's one law that I'll say my dad, without realizing it, taught me at a very young age, and I never forgot it, and I like kind of applied it in my life. He never put the words to it, that
Right.
that I did, but so back when I was growing up, there were still dinosaurs on the planet and things like that. a lot of years ago, but anyway, so it was back at a time, as a little kid, and running or jogging was becoming really popular. Mm-hmm. This was in the 1970s, and my dad and his buddies really got into running. And my dad typically would go out right near our house. There was this 4-mile loop that my dad would typically do. He'd run 4 miles. And this was back at a time, where you didn't hear about people doing these crazy ultra marathons and stuff too often. And so 4 miles was kind of a big deal and pretty impressive, Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, my dad would do that loop twice, and he'd proudly come home and tell me and my sister, I ran 8 miles today, and that was amazing, And well, one time, it was on the weekend, my dad goes out for his run, and he's gone for quite a long time, much longer than usual. And he comes back home, and he says, I ran 28 miles today. Wow. Right? And I was like, oh, come on, Dad, no way, right? And it's come on. He's like, no, I ran 28 miles. I really did. And I said, well, how did you do that, Dad? And he said, well, I didn't think of it as running 28 miles. I have this 4-mile loop, and instead I thought of it as running 4 miles 7 times.
Wow.
And I've run 4 miles thousands of times over the years. And so, just kind of essentially mentally, he didn't look at it as oh my gosh, looking up from the base of the mountain up top and seeing this big mountain. Mm-hmm. Instead, he just kind of mentally chunked it up into, for him, what was something he had done, thousands of times, running 4 miles. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did. And, and I never forgot that. You can tell I was a little kid, and that was how I've, done a lot of things. I talked a little bit about baseball, and then anyway, that was one of my dreams, was to be the center fielder for the Philadelphia Phillies. It didn't quite work out that way, but I say it, a lot of people are yeah, kids always say yeah, they want to be a pro baseball player or whatever. But, I really took it seriously. It wasn't just something I talked about. Mm-hmm. And I was, even though we were very middle class, I was very fortunate. I had a pitching machine and batting cage in my backyard.
Wow.
A whole long story behind that. I won't get into that. But anyway, I would literally go out, weather permitting, every day, and I'd hit at least 500 balls a day. And sometimes I would do over 1,000. And, and I, at the time, actually, I wasn't even wearing batting gloves, and my hands would be bleeding, and I'd go into the house and I'd put Band-Aids on, and I would just keep hitting. But when I'd go out and hit, 500 or 1,000 balls every day, I didn't think it was like, oh my God, I'm like 500 balls, right? The rack on my pitching machine, held like 25 balls. So I was just like, I'm doing, increments of 25, every four, increments of 25, that's 100, then another 25, 25, 25, 25, that's 200. And it's just a lot of it is mental,
right.
and sort of chunking things up in your mind into these small and manageable
Ways that you can
pieces.
break.
Yeah. So, and it's actually very, very interesting that the past few episodes we have been talking about atomic habits, how to get these habits engraved into your mind in such a way that it doesn't feel like you are doing work. So the first thing to avoid is to feel like you're working. You're just hitting the bat, like that's all you are doing, 500 times. But since you've done it and it's just a habit, it's a part of your system, you actually feel a bit weird if you don't do it.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a great book. And, I won't get into too much about, my book that'll be coming out in the future, but my book takes atomic habits like one step further. So I'm really, really excited about it. And it also interjects a lot of humor throughout it as well. It's a really fun read. So it's in the editing phase right now, and it's kind of in the home stretch and stuff, but it'll still be a little while before it gets out there. But like I said, I love that book, Atomic Habits. Mine kind of takes that stuff to a whole new level, and plus weaves in a lot of fun and humor into it. And I'll just tell you real brief.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kind of in the beginning, and it kind of ties into just sort of the business and the success I had but just as a very little kid, I always wanted to be the best at everything. I was just like obsessed with it. And at a very young age, my parents bought me my first copy of the Guinness Book of World Records. And I actually still have that book from when I was a little kid. And when I got that book, I was just fascinated with it. And I was just like, I gotta set a world record. I like wanted that in the worst way, and I was serious about it. And so anyway, there's a whole long story in my book, true story, about first trying to figure out what record I wanted to go after, and then just kind of this whole record chase that I had, and all these lessons I learned from it, and a lot of those lessons that I had applied to this business and to use to help turn it around. So my book talks a little bit about that. It talks a lot about the actual business and that whole experience. We would need hours for me to kind of go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And as soon as your book comes out, we definitely have several episodes where we'll be talking about the book and going deep into these laws. But David, before we move on to the next bucket here, I want. Would you mind just telling us a little bit more about two laws? One of them, you mentioned them at the beginning, and we said that we are going to get back to it, is the law of self-belief. The other one.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Say
you
that
can
again,
hear me.
the law.
So the law of self-belief. Self-belief.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then another one that you've mentioned before is the law of excuses. Can you just briefly tell us a little bit about that? And I know we find more in your book, but we just want to hear a little something about that.
Yeah. So, really, the law of excuses, as I've named it, is, and it's what I was doing initially when I got this business. I was making excuses and blaming the world, and the way that one goes is, in the history of mankind, slash womankind, not a single excuse ever achieved a goal. Goals are accomplished through the summation of consistent, focused, thoughtful, and unspectacular actions repeated day after day. And just some of the few things I talked about, just like wiping down equipment, or having an abundance of equipment, like
right.
Like those are unspectacular things, and greeting customers and getting to know their names, they're not glamorous, they're not exciting. Don't make excuses not to do them, because usually like things that are easy to do, they're also easy not to do, right?
Yeah.
So for me, when I first got that business, I was just making all these excuses and complaining and what have you. And like I was telling you earlier, I've got a law of success for everything. And just as I said the word complaining, it reminded me. And so I wrote one called the law of complaining. and the way that one goes is, 1 minute spent complaining robs you of 60 seconds of making forward progress towards your goal. So excuses aren't going to get you anywhere in life. And hold yourself, accountable for things. Don't blame others, and believe in yourself. Like, I think one of the first things I said when this started was, it's not hard to become a millionaire. The hard part is getting to believe in yourself that you can do it. And, so if any of your listeners are out there, have a business and they're struggling and they've been going at it for a while, again, don't have a plan B, and believe in yourself, have confidence in yourself, keep plugging away and learn from these, failures along the way. I did a number of things when I had this business, although I will say most of them were successful the first time around, things I experimented with, but, I experimented and, not everything worked. One of the things I remember actually that didn't work at all was, people would come in all the time, like salespeople trying to sell me stuff, and whether it was, advertising and things. And I still remember this one. It's, you'll see how long ago this was, because people don't really have phone books anymore, right? You just kind of, look it up. But this was when like phone books were real popular, and this, swift talking salesman comes in and he sells covers that you put on your phone book, and they would have all these advertisements on. And he gave me this wonderful sales pitch, right? And it sounded really good. And he's like, and I don't remember the specifics. It's like, did you know like that on average, every person looks at their phone book, like 4 times a day, and but whatever it was at the time, again, many years ago. And so, if you have like your ad and a coupon on there, and, we distribute it to, 10,000 people, it'll get looked at like 40,000 times a day, Well, anyway, to make a long story short, and it wasn't a ton of money, although at the time it felt like it. I think it was about $600 or so. And I bought this advertisement, and I set it up in a way so I could track it and know for sure, whether I got a sale from it. Yeah. Well, about a year later, he comes back and, he's like all excited. Oh, so how did it go? And, about renewing. And I said to him, I didn't get one single sale from it. Wow. And so anyway, that was something that failed. I learned from it, and I told him thanks, but no thanks. And I didn't repeat it, but the point is though, learn from your failures, don't repeat them, adjust, and, you know, see them as a positive. You know, it's not always easy to, right? It's
Agreed.
like,
Yeah.
you know, but learn from those mistakes, use them to, you know, propel you forward, and just think of it as every failure is like you've found something that doesn't work, you've eliminated that, right?
Right.
You know, it's kind of like one of my favorite sayings, you know, is the one with, like, you know, Edison and the light bulb, and it's like he says, you know, like I haven't I haven't failed, you know, I don't know, whatever, 10,000 times. I've just found 10,000, you know,
That do not
ways
work.
that don't work, you
Right.
know. So like really, like, but seriously, like, think of things that way, is like, great, you tried something, it didn't work. You've eliminated that. You're one step closer to, you know, finding those things that do work, you know. And
Absolutely. Thank you so
so
much, David. And for our listeners, if you're joining us right now at the pretty much the end of our second hour, we're still talking about the laws of success. We are here with David Freedman, learning about his life, learning about his success, learning about his journey as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, as an employee, and as an employer. A lot of hats that he has on himself. But this is amazing. Adam, another question before we jump into the last two buckets.
Yeah. Actually, I would just go back to the question and just transition directly to the next part. We're just talking about current events, actually, and I believe this is it's going to be on one way of us starting to close things down. And I think Mark mentioned that in today's economy, in the today's financial market, how things are looking for 2023, and will be any type of advice, any type of thought of the U.S. going into recession, and just kind of a sneak peek into the financial market of the U.S.
yeah, so, you know, again, like I was saying, you know, I think there's just some basic, you know, and I don't think, you know, I think we tend to overcomplicate things, you know, and there's a Dr. Seuss quote that I really love, and hopefully I'll remember it right, but it's like, you know, sometimes the questions are complicated and the answers are simple, you know. And I really think, you know, we often, I'm not saying that things aren't, you know, never complicated, but I really think we often tend to overcomplicate things. And I really think, you know, regardless of how the economy is, you know, if you have a business or whatever, I think there is just still some basic fundamentals that just never change, regardless of the economy. And again, you know, it starts, you know, if you're not a one man or one woman show, if you will, and you have folks working for you, it all starts with, you know, how you treat your employees, you know, and ultimately focusing on the customer. So maybe if things are a little different and the economy's bad, and et cetera, and people are struggling, you know, maybe you've got to look at your pricing structure. Maybe you need to make some price concessions for a while, you know, but the basic fundamentals of focusing on the customer and providing them with value, and ideally more value than your competition does. I don't think that never changes, you know, as far as I'm concerned. And as far as, you know, we talked a little bit about the law of standards. Well, you know, there's no better time actually than in difficult times to evaluate your standards and raise them, you know, raise them another level. And I think it's, you know, I think with your standards also, and I'll give an example, sort of like with exercise. I don't know that, and maybe it's a little semantics, you don't necessarily can raise your standards overnight from like being the worst to the absolute best. And I'll kind of describe what I mean by that and using exercise. So if you hear me okay? Oh,
We can still
don't
hear
hear
you
you
okay.
guys.
Yes, we can still hear you okay.
Okay,
He
great.
said.
Wasn't sure if we had some technical difficulties, but
Now
what
we
I was
good.
going to, okay, what I was going to say was, you know, in terms of standards and raising them, and you know, I give the example of the exercise of like you don't go from the lowest standard of no exercise to the highest standard of, you know, doing Ironman competitions, you know, because you'll get hurt along the way,
That's right.
right? So sort of looking at your standards and raising them gradually over time. And so, you know, taking a look at things, and I think it's, you know, it's really a never-ending process, and looking at your standards, you know, for, you know, the value that you're providing to your customers, the quality, you know, if you're selling a physical product, the quality of it, you know, you know, we talked about the law of difference, and great minds don't think alike, great minds think differently. So you might be like, well, in hard, challenging times, you know, put out a lower quality product, you know, to save some money and like maybe lower your price. What I would say is, you know, if you can, is raise your quality and lower your price and sell a lot more units, you know. And I don't know that people always, you know, always think that way. And, you know, so I just think there's just certain fundamental things, regardless of the economy, that just, you know, for success, they never change. And I like I said, I go back to I think we often tend to overcomplicate things and take a problem and blow it out of proportion, right? There's tons of people like when the economy goes bad, right? They thrive and they have their best year ever.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's what social media and politicians strive
know,
for.
So like I would look at it like with a tough economy, like, you know, if I still had my business of like, all right, great, you know, things are tough and maybe like, you know, people can't, like as many people say, afford a gym membership, right? So, you know, so maybe what I'm going to do is I'll lower my prices even more, you know, and kind of really put pressure on my competition, make it affordable, get people to keep coming. Maybe then figure out, okay, well, now I'm not getting as much in membership fees. Like, what other things can I offer while they're at my club that can bring in revenue that I haven't done before?
That's
right?
interesting. Yeah.
You know, so thinking about those things, you know, what could I do? Like, well, geez, I don't know, maybe I'm just making up some examples, you know, like maybe you don't offer nutritional products, and I had like a whole line of them, but it's like, okay, what can I sell? I've got, you know, these people here. What can I do to take advantage of, you know, when these customers are here and now they're paying me less? How can I make that up in other ways and maybe do even better than I ever did before?
Wow.
You know?
That's very insightful, David. And thank you so much for your insight and everything that we've shared on this podcast today. I know it's going to be a blast. I don't even think that we have enough time to like edit and cut everything. I just, you know, we want to put it raw out there as is, you know, uncut with all our mistakes and technical issues and everything that,
you know, that's all good though. That's the way real life is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we want to keep it real, and we try as much as we can.
You don't get to edit real life.
Exactly. And you know, and David, we want to wind up with these few questions here. These are just yes or no questions, type of short explanation type of questions. So what is one quality or one flaw that you have that you like to change? What is one flaw that you have in your life? If you were to redo your life, you say, okay, I'll definitely change this and do this differently.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, just kind of looking back on things, and I have to still be careful, is, you know, I tend to be too much of a perfectionist at times. And so sometimes as a result of that, well, one, you might spend too much time on something where like, you know, getting it 90% right is good enough.
Right.
And that extra time to get it to the 100% really is time that could be spent better doing something, else. It also too, you have to be careful, if you are like that, sometimes it delays you from taking action, because like you feel like, well, before I start this new business, like I got to learn this and learn more and more. And then you learn those things. It's like, oh, geez, well, what about this? And, and you keep going and going. And then, the weeks turn into months and the months turn into years and you haven't taken any action, so, I'd say, that's probably, a big thing that, I'll say and I've gotten a lot better at that.
Yeah.
And, always wanted to like everything to like be perfect. And so, I could spend maybe more time on something that I should have or delay starting something, feeling like I got to learn more. And, I'll tell you this, it's kind of funny when I look back on that fitness center business, and I had all this like general fitness, knowledge and business background. When I look back at it, it's scary when I think about all the things I didn't know when I took that over,
Right.
And so part of it too is, kind of the saying is, learning to fly on the way down, and you don't have to know everything, and you'll never know everything.
Yeah.
That's pretty beautiful.
And,
And,
So, and what is the number one book that you would recommend to people?
That's a great question. There's a small there's a number of books I've read, but there's a small handful that I'll say I really love that have made a big difference in my life. Number one is Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, and really like anything like
Adam does not like that book. I'm putting him on the spot. I do not know what. But go ahead. Think and grow
anything
rich.
by Napoleon Hill is like fabulous. I love, it's funny, these guys like go back a long ways, and I just think their stuff is timeless.
Agree. Yes.
Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret. I think that one is just absolutely brilliant. And I've used lessons from that quite a bit in my life. Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking.
That was a
And
great one.
another one that maybe you guys haven't heard of is by a guy named Joseph Murphy, and it's The Power of the Subconscious Mind. And I really loved all those things, and would highly encourage folks to not just like read the books, but like really study them. And I'll say one of the nice things too, these days.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have lost David. And we'll wait a few more minutes here and see if he can get back to it. But we appreciate you staying with us all this night and having this wonderful and amazing time with y'all. So we're going to take another little break for about 2 minutes. We will play some music, and then we see as soon as we can get David back to finish up this interview. We'll be back in just a few minutes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. David actually ran out of battery. That was quite interesting. We just got off the phone with him. We are going to finish this up with him when he jumps back from his phone on the Zoom meeting. So in a few minutes here, I'll be sure I'll be standing up so I can have him back on the screen, and that we can finish this up in beauty. But thank you so much for staying with us, for tuning in with us. And do not forget, we still have our giveaway going on. And the last few questions we're going to ask David, maybe the last question we're going to ask him is, if you want to know more about David's upcoming book, The Laws of Success, he still has he's still in the editing phase of it, but he can give you more information about it. But also, where can you find information about David? If you want to contact David, reach out to him directly. David will also give us a few more informations about how we can we can reach out to him in person, and if you want to book him for some training and stuff like that, he will give us all those information. But with that being said, I think we had a really amazing time, and I see that David is back, so we're going to put him back on. Hey David, welcome back.
Sorry, we had some technical difficulties with computer running out of power. So.
Wow, that means we've been here for quite some time. It's been almost 2 hours. So, David, go ahead. We have there was.
I think that's a good thing, though. That's like what real life is.
Absolutely.
There's problems that come up that you don't expect or anticipate, and you have to deal with them. So it's just I think in a way it's good that happened.
That's absolutely right. So David, we have, I'll say, 2 more questions, but the very last question will be about where can people find you. But before that, the very last question, and I'll give you a minute to give us an answer. Challenge you within a minute. If you had a magic wand and you could change anything in the world, what will that be?
Change anything in the world. Wow. Gosh, there's a number of things, and I say they aren't business related at all, which is kind of what we've been talking about,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, certainly just, world peace would be like a really good thing if we could change that,
That's
it's
great.
just horrible, some of the things that are going on, these days out there in the world. So that would certainly be, up at the top of the list. Cures for, awful diseases out there.
That's right.
I've got so many friends I've lost count that have, had cancer and things like that. So if I could change anything, world peace and eliminate, hunger and disease, things like that, I guess I would have to pick. Business come into the conversation if that was the intent of the question.
Yeah, absolutely. We just want an honest and clear answer without a political one. But thank you so much, David, for your time. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for everything that you share with us on the podcast today. John Maxwell always says that life has 3 phases. You learn, you earn, and then you return. And I think that you've gotten a point in your life where you're returning so much to us, and your upcoming book, The Laws of Success, we cannot wait to start talking about that book here on the podcast. David, where can people find you?
Yeah. So right now, the best place for people to find me is on LinkedIn, and they can search for David Freedman, Freedman, and then just to make sure they get the right one, type in Lehigh Valley Health Network, and that should bring them right to me. And I post a really good, inspiring, motivational video every Monday on there that they can find. And throughout the week, I have very positive, inspiring, uplifting posts, and they can follow there. By all means, feel free to message me, have any questions, anything I can do to help anyone. I'm not looking for anything in return. I just like helping folks, achieve success. So if there's anything I could do to help anyone out there, please please reach out. Be delighted to help you. So that right now, that's the best place to connect with me.
Absolutely. David, it was really fabulous having you here. It was great, and I know this is not the last time that we're having you. We plan to be out there in Philly, and we will meet you in person and have another interview in person and have a lot of fun. I hope you can barbecue. I love eating, so as long as you can cook, I'm fine. I'll be out there.
You guys are invited to my house anytime. If you come like in the summer, I got a nice pool. We can swim. I'll cook on the grill, and have a good time.
We're definitely looking forward to that. Any other thing, Adam?
No, really, it was such a great time. Actually, I got to sit down and be inspired. And as I said at the beginning, is that David is at the place where I want to be, and just to hear from him directly. In Africa, we always say, there's a writer, his name is Amadouan Pateba, he passed, and he said that in Africa, when an elder passes, it's like a library that is burned. Because a lot of the African stories, a lot of things that we know, they are not in the books. They are the experiences that a lot of our elders lived through. And as I was sitting here today, I was listening to all of these advice and all these experiences that you won't directly be reading from a book straight up. It's some raw experiences that somebody has tried it and it has worked, and they are telling you that, hey, I follow this path and that. And that's the idea of contribution that we've even talked about so many times on the podcast, with the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John C. Maxwell, the law of contribution. This contribution, this investment that you are making into our listeners and on our own lives. To me, I was really blessed just to be here and listen to David talking. So thank you so much again, David, for the time that you took to spend this moment with us. And for our listeners, really find David. Try to find David and try to listen to those videos that he posts every Monday. I've been tuning in some of the videos and that he shares every Monday. They've been great.
And they're very rewarding, and a lot of, as you said, the simple things, the little simple things that we neglect, those are the things that make the difference. David, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a friend, for leading, for mentoring, and for teaching. Thank you for all the good that you're doing in the world. And we'll be looking forward to your book. As soon as you have a date available, please let us know. We're going to post it on our Instagram and YouTube pages so that people can know where to purchase the book. And we definitely have a couple of episodes to talk about the laws of success as soon as it's out. David, thanks again for everything.
Oh, thank you both. It was really an absolute pleasure getting to spend this evening with both of you. You guys are both doing really fabulous things that are really making a difference in this world. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is with that we'll be ending today's episode. We are also going on vacation. Not really on vacation, but we will not be hearing for the next 2 weeks. We hear back in January, and we finish up with Atomic Habit. We hope we can have maybe a 15-30 minute episode next Tuesday just to talk about the fourth law of behavior change. And then in January, when we come back, we'll be mostly talking about leadership, the 5 levels of leadership with Dr. John Maxwell. It's an amazing book. If you haven't read that book, you can actually try to purchase that and make sure that you have a copy so that when we start talking about it in January, that you're in sync with us. Any other thing, Adam?
No, I think just don't forget about our giveaway. Keep on sharing it, keep on spreading the word, and I believe you can win some free stuff.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be seeing you. Thank you so much, David. God bless you, and you have a good one. Bye-bye.